Well, hi. I'm Fred's son, Stephen. Um, I'm glad I wrote down what I have to say because today's a weird day. So, anyway, um, when my dad was first diagnosed with leukemia, we all got on a call. We were shocked at the news and afraid of what might come. We all thought he had a cold. uh, I asked him how he was feeling, and he said that he was more sorry that we had to go through it than he was afraid that he would be going through it. The fruit of the Spirit is love. In the hospital, he was put on ketamine for a bone marrow biopsy. As my mom tells it, the ketamine gave him hallucinations. He grabbed one of his IV tubes like a line and said, "Fish on." She's been going through therapy, and for the sake of clarity, naming the different aspects of her personality. So she named her inner child Susie Q, and she asked my dad what his inner child's name was. He said Freddie. So the week before he died, they went camping and they stopped at a rest stop, and she asked him what he wants, and he said ice cream. He said, "Freddie gets as much ice cream as he wants now." So Freddie and Susie Q sat down and had ice cream together. The fruit of the Spirit is joy. My parents invited me to his last follow-up with the doctors, and him and I ended up alone in a room together for a few minutes. That day, his pain had gotten away from him, and he was really starting to feel it. I just chatted with him to try to help distract him from the pain or whatever. And while we were alone in that moment, he told me, "It'll be okay. No matter what happens, it'll be okay." The fruit of the Spirit is peace. When we went home that day, I helped him walk from the car into the house. And when we got him into his chair, the dogs wanted to jump into his lap and kiss his face. The walk from the car was an excruciating 5 minutes, him going extremely slowly from the pain. He didn't want the dogs in his lap, but his reprimand was a very calm no, and they obeyed. He didn't raise his voice then. He almost never raised his voice to anybody. I am 37 years old, and I can genuinely say that I've never heard him speak unkindly about anyone, even under strain, even in the process of dying from cancer. The fruit of the Spirit is patience. As he was going through this journey, and especially as we got closer and closer to his death, I can't tell you how many people told me, even today, that they loved my dad. Not only that, each of these people were also certain of his love for them. They told me that they chatted every couple months or so, or how loving he was to them, or that his advice that he gave them was wise and timely. A couple days after he died, his phone started ringing, and eventually my sister picked it up. It was someone named Pablo, an old coworker who my dad had left a message with the week before. Pablo, who none of us had ever heard of, started crying on the phone when my sister gave him the news. My dad could make a person feel like he loved them with a few minutes of conversation, and it wasn't an act. He did love them. The fruit of the Spirit is kindness. He was in near remission for a few months, and one weekend he called me up and asked me if he could buy us coffee. He said, "Yes, I am inviting myself over." He came over and we chatted for a couple of hours. This process of making relationships was the kind of thing that he often did with his time. He was always helping or visiting with someone. I can't tell you the amount of time he gave away to help his neighbors or his sons figure out some issue with their electricity or their HVAC units or some other thing. He was so giving of his time that as a teenager, I actually learned to play using the drums in the sanctuary while he volunteered his time installing heating and air conditioning in an addition at our church. The fruit of the Spirit is generosity. In the last days of his life, my mom spent nearly all her time caring for him. He was nearly unresponsive, but anytime she needed to give him medication or help him with anything, she would ask him if he wanted a kiss, and he would pucker his lips. They were married for, correct me if I'm wrong, 44 years. And I can tell you it wasn't always easy, but he loved to serve and support her. In those days and hours, above everything, their love for each other really showed through. The fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness. The day he invited himself over to have coffee, my toddler son Avery was a little bit leery because he hadn't seen him in person for a few months, but Grandpa just gave Avery his space and the occasional signature Fred Matney smile. By the time he left, Avery was telling him all kinds of toddler stories and giving him hugs and high fives. He was like that with all kids and had a similar way with all people. He'd be kind and present and just let them open up on their own time. At his last doctor appointment, and one of the things he talked about was that he wanted more time to be a grandpa. He said, "I'm a really good grandpa." And he really, really was. The fruit of the Spirit is gentleness. As he was going through the process of chemo and recovery, he and I had a few brand new conversations. We talked about what he was thinking and learning, what he thought the meaning of life might be. He talked with Sarah, my sister, about what he hoped heaven was like. It was beautiful and inspiring to see my dad continuing to grow and to form himself right up to the time that he died. It aches to say it, but I never realized my dad was so self-reflective, even though I saw it all the time. Like once he told me that I should tell him if I ever saw him using language I didn't think he himself would approve of. He wanted to be shown if he was doing wrong. But despite me not always noticing it, he was a constantly thinking, considering person, and he never finished becoming. He never finished getting better. The fruit of the Spirit is self-control. So I say that to illustrate this. My dad is the best person I've ever known. And I don't think it's even close. Sorry, everybody else. In my experience, a person like him is exceedingly rare. And this world is better since he was in it. I wish he had more time, and I wish I had more time with him. It's hard to fathom life without him. It doesn't feel right or fair, but I'm grateful to have had him. I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet to have had him not only in my life, but for him to have been my dad. So I wrote a song. And now sorry, you get more of me.